After urging supporters to march on the Capitol and at times using violent language to do so, President Trump has been impeached a second time. And while this was primarily a Democratic effort, 10 Republicans broke ranks to vote to impeach as well. Here at home, New Mexico's top Republicans are sticking with Trump. Over the weekend, Steve Pearce tweeted that Trump would be president, quote, forever. That is, of course, wrong and, most importantly, unconstitutional. Mr. Pearce deleted that tweet later, but in an interview with the Santa Fe New Mexican, he refused to admit the president might have played a role in the Capitol riot. Merritt, got to ask you first, what's the sense in the Republican Party about Mr. Pearce's unflinching stance? And we're going to get to Yvette Herrell in a second, but I want to talk about Mr. Pearce first. What's your sense of where he's been on this?
Well, it's not just Steve Pearce's, but one Republican in a party of millions. The Republican Party is split right now. There are Trump Republicans and there's the mainstream Republican Party. The president fomented an insurrection. He fomented the insurrection based on a lie. It was a 2-month lie he perpetuated about the results of an election. It was a planned agitprop Soviet-style misinformation campaign. It was for no reason but to try and overturn a constitutional process, which is, of course, our 4-year quadrennial presidential election. It's deadly serious. He's an unserious man who has threatened our democracy. So the Republican Party seems to, in some ways, think that even after last week, as of January 7th, they can keep going about their business. The RNC chairwoman has been elected to, on the national level, another term. And the Trump movement is eroding, but still there. And this can't continue. The Republicans who voted to object to electoral college votes need to acknowledge publicly the seriousness and wrongness of their actions. And the Republican Party must repudiate Trumpism immediately and move on with a fresh slate for 2022. And importantly, the entire GOP organization has to rebuild voter confidence and trust in our elections with proactive and thoughtful engagement and outreach, because thousands of American voters were convinced their votes were stolen thanks to this false misinformation campaign. And it's on the GOP to earn back their trust.
Good point there. Mr. Mulryan, I mentioned Yvette Herrell, our CD2 representative. And
yes.
Merritt just mentioned that everyone who stood up and opposed this and the Pennsylvania count and all that should be in some way held responsible, or we just know who they are. What's your sense of where, how Yvette Herrell's situation is going to play for either independents, Republicans? How are you reading the tea leaves from this?
I mean, there's an old saying, a week is a year in politics. And I think that, when we start looking at what's going to happen to Congresswoman Herrell down this road, we don't know. Yet, I would also say that one of the mistakes, and I believe it's a mistake, is that, there's no sense in fighting the last election. And, I think the Congresswoman is on the wrong side of this issue. Yet, Democrats should use that energy to look for a candidate that they can be for. And, this idea that we're going to remove her, that everything she's doing is wrong and all of that. There's some validity to what they're talking about. The Democrats also have to make a choice, and they have to say, let's move forward. We've got a new administration. One of the things that I keep thinking about is that 2020 was 1968, and that it is a very big change, and we have a huge number of new Republican women in Congress, and we have a larger number of gay representatives in Congress. We are clearly leaving the old America. We're heading towards a new America, and I think we should get there. We should concentrate on the future, be optimistic, and let's look forward.
Dan McKay, interestingly, I'm going to bring it back to home here. What's the Republican bench look like here in New Mexico? We just talked about Steve Pearce and Yvette Herrell. For leadership, for high-profile offices, what's going on with Republicans right now?
There are some younger Republican women who are legislators who are pretty active at the Roundhouse, who might be potential candidates. I don't know whether they're, what their interest is in running for things, but we recently saw Rebecca Dow is taking a leadership position within the House Republican caucus. She's been very active during floor debates. Kelly Fajardo from Valencia County was one of the leading legislators who worked on an anti-harassment policy a few years ago and raised questions about whether lobbyists were being taken advantage of. It's hard to see. A lot of the kind of Albuquerque area Republicans have been wiped out of the legislature. So a lot of the bench in terms of elected officials now, they're from more rural areas.
Interesting point there. Kathy McGill, I got a little bit of a switch up here on you, but it's interesting to me. Republican Senate candidate Mark Ronchetti's back on the air at KRQE 13 doing weather. Just sort of popped up out of nowhere as their chief meteorologist. The station has taken some heat on Facebook. I've seen a lot of people having a little bit of an issue. Should the station have said something, to let folks know why they're bringing him back?
Should they have said something to let people know why they're making an employment decision? I don't think so. I think they have a right to make that decision.
Well, truly, but is this not? He outperformed Donald Trump here. he spent millions of dollars to elevate his name and his face. He's not like he's just a regular schmo off the street.
Yeah, I was shocked at the amount of support that he received, and at first downplayed it until I drove up to Rio Rancho and I saw all the signs. And he did very well, and they probably made a good business decision. Whether or not it loses them viewers and whether or not they care about that remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm. Merritt, you want to take on that one? I think it's kind of interesting, the Mark Ronchetti thing.
Surprised me, not at all. Not at all. And I'm sure there is probably something in his contract with regard to that. That was not a surprise. I also think he's a really good on-air personality. His voice is great. His patter's great. This isn't the last we're going to see of Mark Ronchetti.
As a candidate, do you mean?
Right. His whole campaign, showed the splits in the New Mexico GOP, not necessarily over President Trump, just over who controls New Mexico Republicans. The New Mexico GOP establishment, the official NMGOP was really focused on Yvette Herrell's race. They were not focused on the Senate. And he showed that he did not need the state party to be a highly successful candidate. So we're going to see more from Mark.
Interesting points. That's going to have to do it for the Line panel this week. I'm back in a moment with a few final thoughts as we head into the legislative session and the Biden presidency.